In the rainforests and woodlands of Australia and New Guinea, male bowerbirds engage in one of nature's most sophisticated artistic endeavors, spending weeks constructing and decorating elaborate structures called bowers to attract female partners. These aren't nests for raising young, but rather bachelor pads designed purely for courtship and mating purposes. The male begins by carefully selecting the perfect location, then meticulously weaving together twigs and grass to create walls, platforms, or even tunnel-like structures depending on his species. Once the basic architecture is complete, the real artistry begins. The male becomes an obsessive interior decorator, collecting hundreds of colorful objects to arrange around his bower in aesthetically pleasing displays. Blue objects are particularly prized, with males gathering everything from blue flowers and berries to discarded bottle caps, plastic toys, and even blue feathers stolen from other birds. The satin bowerbird male will spend hours arranging and rearranging his collection, sometimes painting the walls with a mixture of saliva and blue berry juice using a piece of bark as a brush. When a female approaches, the male performs an elaborate dance in front of his creation, picking up various objects to show them off while making complex vocalizations that can include mimicry of other bird calls, mechanical sounds, and even human speech. The female carefully inspects both the bower and the male's performance before deciding whether he's worthy of mating. Successful males may attract multiple females to their artistic masterpieces, while less skilled architects often go without mates entirely. In the shallow lagoons and salt lakes where thousands of flamingos gather in pink clouds that seem to paint the landscape, these elegant birds engage in one of nature's most spectacular group courtship displays, where entire flocks participate in synchronized dancing that can involve hundreds or even thousands of individuals moving in perfect harmony. The breeding season begins when environmental conditions trigger hormonal changes throughout the colony, causing the birds to develop more intense pink coloration from the carotenoid pigments in their diet of algae and small crustaceans. As excitement builds in the flock, small groups of flamingos begin performing what researchers call head-flagging displays, where they rapidly turn their heads from side to side while stretching their necks to full extension, creating a mesmerizing wave of motion that spreads through the colony like a pink wave. The displays become increasingly elaborate as more birds join in, with the flock performing synchronized marching movements, where hundreds of flamingos walk in the same direction while maintaining perfect spacing and timing, their long legs moving in unison like a perfectly choreographed ballet. The birds also engage in wing-saluting behaviors, where they simultaneously spread their black flight feathers against their pink bodies, creating stunning visual contrasts that flash across the colony in coordinated waves. These group displays serve to synchronize the reproductive cycles of all the birds in the colony, ensuring that egg-laying and chick-rearing occur at the optimal time when food resources are most abundant. Individual pairs form within this group excitement, with partners performing more intimate versions of the group dances, while building their cone-shaped mud nests in the dense colony, where thousands of flamingo families will raise their chicks together in one of nature's most spectacular nurseries. Deep in the rainforests of Central and South America, male manakins have evolved some of the most elaborate and athletic courtship dances in the bird world, performing acrobatic routines that would impress any human choreographer with their precision, creativity, and sheer physical skill. These small, brightly colored birds prepare for their performances by carefully selecting and maintaining special dancing grounds called leks, cleared areas on the forest floor where they remove every leaf and twig to create perfect stages for their courtship displays. The red-capped Manakin, one of the most famous performers, has developed a signature move that looks remarkably similar to Michael Jackson's Moonwalk, where the bird slides backward across its stage while appearing to walk forward, creating an optical illusion that captivates both female audiences and human researchers. Male mannequins spend years perfecting their routines, starting as young apprentices who observe master performers and gradually learn the complex sequences of jumps, slides, wing snaps, and vocalizations that make up their species' traditional courtship repertoire. The golden-collared Manakin performs an even more spectacular routine, leaping rapidly between vertical saplings in a display that involves dozens of lightning-fast movements, with the bird bouncing off each tree trunk while producing sharp snapping sounds with specialized wing feathers that create percussion to accompany the visual display. These performances require incredible physical conditioning and coordination, with males practicing their routines daily and maintaining their performance areas year-round to be ready when females arrive to evaluate potential mates. Females visit multiple male territories and watch numerous performances before choosing their partners, making their selections based on the quality of the dancing, the condition of the performance area, and the male's overall health and vigor, as demonstrated through his athletic abilities. Beneath the waves in oceans around the world, sharks engage in courtship behaviors that would surprise anyone who thinks of these ancient predators as mindless killing machines, demonstrating remarkable gentleness and sophisticated social awareness during their romantic encounters. Many shark species begin their courtship with elaborate following behaviors, where males swim behind females for hours or even days, maintaining specific distances and swimming patterns that communicate their interest without appearing threatening or aggressive. The courtship process often involves gentle touching, with males using their snouts to nudge females along their sides, fins, and backs, in what appears to be an aquatic form of caressing that helps establish physical familiarity and trust between potential partners. Male sharks must overcome significant challenges during courtship, as females are often larger and more powerful than males, requiring suitors to demonstrate their worthiness through persistent but respectful attention rather than aggressive dominance. Some species engage in synchronized swimming displays, where pairs of sharks swim together in graceful spirals and figure-eight patterns that showcase their coordination and compatibility as potential mates. The actual mating process requires remarkable cooperation, as males must position themselves alongside females and use specialized reproductive organs called claspers to transfer sperm, while both sharks continue swimming, often in a gentle rolling motion that can last for several minutes. During this vulnerable time, other sharks in the area typically respect the mating pair and avoid interfering, suggesting that shark societies have complex social rules about appropriate behavior during reproduction. After mating, many shark species show continued association between partners, with some pairs remaining together for extended periods and even appearing to hunt cooperatively, demonstrating that shark relationships can involve ongoing social bonds rather than simply brief reproductive encounters. In the darkness of warm summer nights, when most of the world sleeps peacefully, male silk moths embark on some of the most remarkable chemical detection journeys in the animal kingdom, using antennae so sensitive they can detect and follow the trail of a single molecule of female pheromone across distances that can span several miles. Female silk moths release their chemical calling cards from specialized glands, creating invisible trails of scent molecules that drift through the night air like chemical beacons, designed to attract males from vast areas of the surrounding landscape. The male moth's antennae are living chemical laboratories, covered with thousands of specialized receptor cells that can distinguish between different pheromone molecules with incredible precision, allowing them to identify not only the presence of a female, but also her species, reproductive condition, and even individual identity from tiny differences in her chemical signature. When a male detects even the faintest trace of female pheromone, He begins a complex navigation behavior that involves flying in a zigzag pattern across the wind, using the concentration gradient of scent molecules to guide him toward the source like an invisible roadmap written in chemicals. The journey can take hours and cover many miles, with the male following an increasingly concentrated trail of pheromones through forests, over hills, and around obstacles that would seem impossible to navigate using only chemical cues carried on the night breeze. As the male gets closer to the female, the concentration of pheromones increases dramatically, causing him to fly in tighter and tighter circles until he finally locates the stationary female, who has been calling to him from her perch on a leaf or tree trunk. The reunion that follows this extraordinary chemical courtship often involves additional close-range pheromone exchanges and tactile courtship behaviors before mating occurs, completing one of nature's most impressive examples of long-distance chemical communication. In the vast blue depths of the world's oceans, male humpback whales create some of the most complex and hauntingly beautiful musical compositions in the animal kingdom, singing elaborate songs that can last for hours and travel across entire ocean basins to reach potential mates swimming thousands of miles away. These magnificent marine musicians begin composing their songs during the breeding season, developing intricate musical themes that include rising and falling notes, rhythmic patterns, and melodic phrases that are combined into movements lasting several minutes each. A complete humpback whale song can contain multiple movements arranged in a specific sequence that the whale repeats over and over, sometimes continuing his performance for up to 30 hours without stopping, creating underwater concerts of extraordinary duration and complexity. The songs are not random vocalizations, but carefully structured compositions that follow musical rules similar to human music, with themes that develop and change over time as whales add new elements and modify existing phrases throughout the breeding season. Most remarkably, all male humpback whales in the same ocean population sing essentially the same song during any given breeding season, but the song gradually evolves over time as individuals introduce variations that spread through the population like cultural fashions or musical trends. These songs travel incredible distances through the ocean, with low-frequency components capable of reaching whales hundreds or even thousands of miles away, creating a communication network that spans entire ocean basins and allows whales to stay in contact across vast distances. Female humpback whales appear to evaluate these songs when choosing mates, with longer, more complex songs potentially indicating healthier, more experienced males who have the energy and skill to maintain extended vocal performances while navigating the challenges of their epic migrations between feeding and breeding grounds. In the microscopic world of rotting fruit and fermenting organic matter, tiny fruit flies engage in courtship rituals that are surprisingly sophisticated and romantic, involving elaborate dances, musical performances, and even the presentation of nuptial gifts that demonstrate the male's ability to provide for potential offspring. Male fruit flies begin their courtship by approaching females and performing a complex sequence of behaviors that include specific wing movements, body orientations, and chemical communications that must be executed in precisely the right order to convince females of their worthiness as mates. The male's courtship dance involves following the female while extending and vibrating one wing to produce species-specific courtship songs, high-frequency buzzing patterns that serve as musical serenades that females evaluate for rhythm, pitch, and duration as indicators of male quality. One of the most charming aspects of fruit fly courtship involves the male's presentation of regurgitated food gifts to the female, where he offers her drops of partially digested nutrients that she can consume immediately to boost her energy reserves for egg production. This nuptial feeding behavior demonstrates the male's foraging ability and his willingness to invest resources in potential offspring, making it an important factor in female mate choice decisions. The male also performs intricate grooming behaviors, carefully cleaning his legs and antennae while positioning himself to display his best physical features to the evaluating female. Throughout this courtship process, the female maintains complete control over whether mating will occur, and she may reject multiple suitors before finding a male whose performance meets her standards for genetic quality, resource-providing ability, and behavioral compatibility. Despite their tiny size and brief lifespans, fruit flies demonstrate that even the smallest creatures can engage in complex social behaviors that involve multiple forms of communication, gift-giving, and careful evaluation of potential partners. Across the wetlands and grasslands of North America, sandhill cranes engage in one of the most touching and enduring love stories in the bird world, forming monogamous pair bonds that can last for decades and are reinforced through daily rituals of synchronized calling and dancing that strengthen their emotional connection. These magnificent birds, standing nearly 4 feet tall with wingspans reaching 7 feet, begin their courtship with spectacular dancing displays that involve leaping high into the air, bowing deeply to each other, and spreading their wings wide while performing intricate steps that look like an elegant ballet choreographed specifically for two. The dancing serves multiple purposes. It helps potential partners assess each other's health and vigor, synchronizes their reproductive cycles, and establishes the deep emotional bond that will sustain their relationship through decades of shared challenges, including long migrations, territory defense, and raising multiple generations of offspring. Once paired, sandhill cranes develop a unique unison call, a duet where both birds call simultaneously with perfectly coordinated timing and pitch, creating a haunting harmony that can be heard for miles across the landscape and serves to announce their territory while reinforcing their pair bond. These unison calls are so perfectly synchronized that they sound like a single voice despite coming from two birds, and each pair develops their own unique vocal signature that distinguishes them from other crane couples in the area. The cranes perform their unison calling ceremony multiple times each day, often triggered by the calls of neighboring pairs, creating cascades of duets that sweep across crane populations like waves of musical communication. Throughout their long lives together, crane pairs continue to dance and call in unison, with their performances becoming more polished and synchronized over time as their bond deepens, demonstrating that love and partnership can grow stronger with age in the natural world, just as they do in human relationships. Above ponds, streams, and wetlands around the world, dragonflies perform some of the most spectacular aerial mating displays in the insect kingdom, engaging in complex flight patterns and mid-air copulation that demonstrates their extraordinary flying abilities and unique reproductive strategies. The courtship process begins when territorial males establish control over prime breeding sites near water, defending their territories through aggressive aerial dogfights that showcase their incredible flying skills as they dart, hover, and maneuver with precision that surpasses any human-built aircraft. When a female enters a male's territory, he must first convince her of his worthiness through impressive flying displays that include rapid figure-8 patterns, hovering demonstrations, and high-speed chases that test both partners' aerial abilities and stamina. If the female accepts the male's advances, they begin one of the most unusual mating processes in the animal world, where the male grasps the female behind her head using specialized claspers at the tip of his abdomen, forming a connection called the wheel position. While maintaining this grip, the male must convince the female to curve her abdomen forward to connect with his reproductive organs, creating a heart-shaped formation that allows sperm transfer to occur while both dragonflies continue flying through the air. This aerial mating can last anywhere from a few minutes to several hours, during which the connected pair may fly considerable distances while remaining locked together in their intimate embrace. The male often guards the female after mating by continuing to hold onto her head, while she deposits eggs in the water, ensuring that his sperm fertilizes her eggs rather than sperm from other males who might attempt to mate with her. Some dragonfly species engage in spectacular mating swarms where hundreds of individuals participate in mass aerial mating displays that create clouds of flying, copulating insects above their breeding sites. In the high desert sagebrush country of western North America, greater sage grouse participate in one of the most spectacular and traditional courtship rituals on the continent, gathering each spring at ancestral dancing grounds called leks that have been used by their species for potentially hundreds of years. These remarkable birds begin their courtship season before dawn, with males arriving at the lek while stars still shine overhead to establish their positions on the traditional dancing ground, where they will compete for the attention of visiting females. As the first light of dawn illuminates the desert landscape, the males begin their extraordinary displays that combine visual spectacle with otherworldly sounds that seem to belong in a science fiction movie rather than the natural world. Each male inflates two bright yellow air sacs on his chest until they resemble small balloons, then rapidly deflates them while simultaneously fanning his pointed tail feathers and drooping his wings to create a dramatic silhouette against the desert sky. The deflation of the air sacs produces a distinctive popping sound, followed by a low-frequency booming that can be heard and felt from great distances, creating an audio advertisement that draws females from miles around to witness the competitive displays. The males also perform elaborate strutting dances, moving across their territories with stiff-legged steps while maintaining their inflated chest displays, and producing their booming calls in carefully timed sequences that demonstrate their stamina and vocal prowess. Female sage grouse visit the lek and carefully evaluate the competing males, often watching displays for hours before making their choice of mate based on the quality of the male's performance, his position on the lek, and his overall physical condition as demonstrated through his dancing and calling abilities. The most successful males, usually those holding territories in the center of the lek, may mate with multiple females during the brief breeding season, while less impressive performers may go without mates entirely. In ponds, lakes, and coastal waters around the world, turtles demonstrate that patience and persistence can be powerful tools of romance, engaging in courtship behaviors that unfold slowly over days or even weeks as males carefully and respectfully pursue potential mates, without the aggressive behavior seen in many other reptile species. Male turtles begin their courtship by approaching females and performing species-specific recognition, behaviors that help ensure they're courting the right species, while also demonstrating their peaceful intentions to females who might otherwise perceive them as threats or competitors. Many aquatic turtle species engage in face-to-face courtship, where the male swims directly in front of the female and uses his elongated front claws to gently stroke her head and neck in rhythmic patterns that seem to have a calming, almost hypnotic effect on the female. This gentle stroking can continue for hours at a time over multiple days, with the male patiently maintaining his position and repeating his caressing motions, while the female evaluates his suitability as a mate based on his persistence, gentleness, and overall physical condition. Some turtle species have evolved even more elaborate courtship rituals, such as the painted turtle males who perform underwater dances while vibrating their shells to create low-frequency sounds that travel through the water to communicate their romantic intentions. The courtship process is entirely non-coercive, with females maintaining complete control over whether and when mating occurs, and males must earn acceptance through their patient demonstrations of devotion rather than through any form of force or aggression. During the courtship period, males often follow females closely while continuing their gentle touching and stroking behaviors, creating extended romantic relationships that can last much longer than the brief mating encounters typical of many reptile species. This patient, respectful approach to courtship reflects the generally peaceful nature of most turtle species and demonstrates how reproductive success can be achieved through cooperation and mutual consent rather than competition and aggression. Along the muddy shores and tidal flats of tropical and subtropical coastlines, male fiddler crabs create one of the most visually striking courtship displays in the invertebrate world, using their dramatically oversized claws to perform synchronized waving ceremonies that can involve thousands of individuals moving in rhythmic waves across the landscape. Each male fiddler crab possesses one enormously enlarged claw that can weigh as much as half his entire body weight, a massive appendage that serves no purpose in feeding or defense, but exists solely for the purpose of attracting female attention during breeding season. When low tide exposes the mudflats where fiddler crabs make their homes, males emerge from their burrows and begin performing elaborate waving displays, raising and lowering their giant claws in species-specific patterns that create visual signals visible to females from considerable distances across the flat terrain. The timing and rhythm of these waves are crucial, with each species having its own characteristic waving pattern that serves as both species identification and quality assessment, allowing females to distinguish between potential mates while evaluating their vigor and coordination. The most spectacular aspect of fiddler crab courtship occurs when hundreds or thousands of males wave simultaneously, creating rippling waves of motion that sweep across the mudflat like a living carpet of orange, red, and brown, claws rising and falling in perfect synchronization. Males also engage in elaborate running displays, where they sprint back and forth in front of their burrows, while waving their claws to create moving advertisements that draw female attention to their specific territories and the quality of their burrow excavation skills. Females wander across the mudflat during these displays, carefully evaluating multiple males before choosing partners based on claw size, waving performance, burrow quality, and territory location, with the most successful males often being those who can maintain the most vigorous displays for the longest periods of time. In the ancient forests of New Zealand, the world's only flightless parrot engages in one of the most unique and engineering-intensive courtship rituals in the bird kingdom, where male cockapos spend weeks excavating precisely shaped bowls in the earth that serve as natural amplifiers for their deep, booming mating calls. These remarkable nocturnal birds, which can live for over 100 years and weigh up to 9 pounds, begin preparing for breeding season by selecting ideal locations on ridgetops or clearings where sound will carry the greatest distances through the forest. Using their powerful beaks and claws, males excavate shallow, bowl-shaped depressions in the ground that are perfectly curved to focus and amplify their low-frequency calls, creating natural sound systems that can project their voices across several miles of dense forest. The construction process is meticulous and time-consuming, with males spending up to 3 weeks perfecting their acoustic bowls while also clearing away vegetation and debris to create clear pathways that lead to their singing stations. Once their amplification systems are complete, male cockapos position themselves in the center of their bowls and begin producing their characteristic booming calls, deep, resonant sounds that have been compared to the noise of a distant foghorn or the breathing of a sleeping giant. These calls can continue for up to 8 hours per night throughout the breeding season, which may last for several months, requiring enormous energy expenditure from males who must maintain their vocal performances while also defending their territories from competing males. The booming calls travel incredible distances through the forest, potentially reaching females up to 3 miles away, but the low frequency of the sounds makes them difficult for females to locate precisely, often requiring them to search for hours or even days to find the calling male. This extraordinary reproductive strategy reflects the kakapo's adaptation to New Zealand's unique predator-free environment, where loud, ground-based calling was originally a successful strategy before human settlement introduced threats that nearly drove these magnificent birds to extinction. Beneath the crystal-clear waters of tropical reefs around the world, corals participate in one of the most spectacular and precisely timed reproductive events on Earth, releasing billions of eggs and sperm simultaneously in mass spawning events that transform the ocean into underwater blizzards of life. These extraordinary synchronized breeding events occur only once or twice per year, triggered by a complex combination of water temperature, lunar cycles, and seasonal changes that somehow coordinate the reproductive timing of hundreds of different coral species across vast areas of reef ecosystem. In the days leading up to spawning, coral polyps begin developing colorful egg and sperm bundles that become visible through their transparent tissues, creating reefs that seem to glow with internal rainbow colors as reproduction approaches. When conditions are perfect, usually during calm nights following a full moon when water temperatures have reached optimal levels, the corals begin their mass release in what researchers describe as an underwater snowstorm of unprecedented beauty and biological significance. Billions of pink, orange, red, and white reproductive bundles rise through the water column like reverse snow, creating dense clouds of genetic material that can extend for miles across the reef and rise all the way to the ocean surface. The timing of this release is so precise that different coral species spawn within minutes of each other, ensuring maximum mixing of genetic material, while overwhelming predators who cannot possibly consume the enormous quantities of reproductive material suddenly available. The floating bundles break apart at the surface, releasing eggs and sperm that combine to form tiny coral larvae called planulae, which will drift with ocean currents for days or weeks before settling on suitable surfaces to begin growing into new coral colonies. This mass spawning strategy represents one of nature's most successful approaches to reproduction in marine environments, allowing sessile organisms that cannot move to find mates by releasing their genetic material into the ocean where currents facilitate mixing and fertilization on a massive scale. In the acacia, woodlands, and grasslands of Africa, male weaver birds demonstrate some of the most impressive architectural skills in the animal kingdom, constructing elaborate hanging nests that serve as both homes and advertisements of their building abilities to females who inspect each structure with the critical eye of experienced real estate evaluators. These small but industrious birds begin their construction projects by selecting strong, flexible branches that will support their woven creations, often choosing locations over water or at the tips of thorny branches that provide protection from predators who might threaten future offspring. Using only their beaks and feet as tools, male weavers begin the intricate process of weaving grass strips into complex three-dimensional structures, starting with a basic ring that will become the entrance to the nest and gradually building outward to create egg chambers, nesting areas, and protective walls. The construction process requires incredible skill and patience, with males making thousands of individual weaving motions to interlock grass strips in patterns that create strong, waterproof structures capable of protecting eggs and chicks from both weather and predators. Different weaver species have evolved distinct architectural styles, with some creating simple bag-shaped nests, while others construct elaborate multi-chambered structures with entrance tunnels, separate brood chambers, and even dummy nests designed to confuse predators about the location of eggs and young. When females arrive to inspect potential nest sites, they conduct thorough evaluations that include testing the structural integrity of the weaving, examining the quality of materials used, and assessing the location's safety and convenience for raising young. Males who fail these inspections see their carefully constructed nests destroyed by choosy females who tear apart substandard construction and move on to evaluate other suitors, forcing rejected builders to start over with new designs and better materials. The most successful males often build multiple nests to increase their chances of attracting mates, creating collections of hanging architecture that demonstrate their skill and persistence to the evaluating females. In the muddy rivers and streams of eastern Australia, the extraordinary platypus engages in courtship behaviors that utilize one of the most unusual sensory abilities in the mammalian world, using specialized electroreceptors in their bills to detect the electrical fields generated by potential mates swimming in murky water, where vision is nearly useless. These remarkable semi-aquatic mammals possess about 40,000 electroreceptor cells concentrated in their leathery bills, giving them the ability to detect the tiny electrical impulses created by muscle contractions and nerve activity in other living creatures, essentially allowing them to see life itself through electrical signatures rather than visual images. During breeding season, male platypuses become more active in seeking out females, using their electroreception abilities to distinguish between the electrical signatures of different individuals and identify females who are approaching reproductive readiness through subtle changes in their bioelectrical patterns. The courtship process takes place primarily underwater, where platypuses are most comfortable and where their electroreception works most effectively, with males following electrical trails left by females as they swim through their aquatic territories. Males court females through gentle touching and swimming behaviors that create specific electrical patterns, essentially communicating through bioelectric signals that can be detected and interpreted by their partner's equally sensitive electroreceptors. This electrical courtship occurs in conjunction with more traditional mammalian behaviors like scent marking and physical contact, but the electroreception adds a unique dimension to platypus romance that exists in no other mammalian species. After successful courtship, females excavate elaborate burrows in riverbanks where they will lay their leathery eggs, making platypuses one of only 2 mammalian species that lay eggs rather than giving birth to live young. The male's role ends after mating, leaving the female to incubate her eggs and raise the young independently. But the electrical courtship that precedes reproduction represents one of the most unusual sensory-based mating systems in the animal kingdom. In the tropical forests of Africa and Asia, hornbills engage in one of the most extraordinary examples of trust and cooperation in the bird world, where females voluntarily seal themselves inside tree cavities for months, while their mates take on the enormous responsibility of providing all food for both the incubating female and growing chicks. This remarkable reproductive strategy begins when pairs of hornbills locate suitable nesting cavities in large trees, often spending weeks searching for holes that are the right size, properly positioned, and safe from predators that might threaten their vulnerable offspring. Once a suitable cavity is found, the female enters the hollow tree and begins the process of sealing herself inside using a mixture of mud, droppings, and food remains that she manipulates with her bill to create a solid wall that leaves only a narrow slit through which her mate can pass food. This sealing process serves multiple purposes. It protects the eggs and later the helpless chicks from predators like snakes and monkeys that could easily raid an open nest, while also ensuring that the female cannot leave during the critical incubation and early rearing period when constant attention is essential for offspring survival. During her imprisonment, which can last anywhere from 2 to 4 months depending on the species, the female undergoes a complete molt of her flight feathers, leaving her temporarily flightless, but allowing her to regrow a fresh set of feathers that will be in perfect condition when she finally breaks out of the cavity. Meanwhile, the male becomes solely responsible for finding and delivering food to his sealed-in family, making hundreds of trips back and forth to the nest while carrying fruits, insects, and small animals that he passes through the narrow feeding slot. This arrangement requires incredible dedication from the male, who must successfully hunt and forage enough food to support his own energy needs, plus those of his mate and growing chicks, all while defending the nest site from competitors and predators who might discover the location of his vulnerable family. In deserts and arid regions around the world, scorpions engage in one of the most delicate and dangerous courtship rituals in the arachnid world, where potential mates must navigate the challenge of reproducing, while both partners possess venomous stingers capable of delivering fatal wounds. The courtship process begins when a male scorpion encounters the chemical trail of a female and follows her pheromone signature across the desert landscape, using specialized sensory organs to track her movements even across rocky terrain where visual cues are limited. When the male finally locates the female, he must immediately signal his romantic rather than predatory intentions through specific behaviors that distinguish him from prey or rival scorpions who might pose threats to the female's safety. The famous scorpion courtship dance, called a promenade adieu by researchers, involves the male grasping the female's pincers with his own claws and leading her in an intricate back-and-forth dance that can last for several hours as both animals carefully position themselves for successful sperm transfer. During this elaborate dance, both scorpions must keep their deadly tails raised and pointed away from each other, requiring incredible coordination and self-control to avoid accidentally stinging their partner during the complex maneuvering required for reproduction. The male leads his partner across the terrain while searching for a suitable surface where he can deposit his spermatophore, a small package containing sperm that the female must be precisely positioned to pick up with her reproductive opening. The timing of this sperm transfer must be perfect, as the male must guide the female into exactly the right position, while both animals maintain their defensive postures and avoid the potentially lethal consequences of a misstep in their dangerous dance. After successful mating, the partners must separate quickly, as the female may attempt to capture and consume the male if he doesn't retreat fast enough, making scorpion reproduction a high-stakes performance where timing, precision, and quick reflexes can mean the difference between reproductive success and becoming a post-mating meal. On tranquil ponds and lakes surrounded by ancient forests in East Asia, male mandarin ducks undergo one of the most dramatic seasonal transformations in the bird world, developing extraordinarily ornate breeding plumage that turns them into living works of art designed to captivate the attention of potential mates. As breeding season approaches, males molt their modest year-round feathers and replace them with an incredible array of colors and patterns that include iridescent greens and purples, bright oranges and yellows, and distinctive white stripes that create one of the most visually striking appearances in the waterfowl world. The most spectacular feature of the male mandarin duck's breeding plumage is his prominent orange sail-like feathers that rise from his back like small flags, complemented by a distinctive orange and white head crest that can be raised and lowered during courtship displays to create dramatic changes in his silhouette. Males also develop unique facial patterns that include white stripes extending from their bills back behind their eyes, creating a masked appearance that enhances their already exotic coloration and makes each individual readily recognizable to potential mates. The courtship displays that accompany this magnificent plumage are equally impressive, with males performing graceful swimming patterns that show off their colors while making soft whistling calls and head bobbing movements that demonstrate their vigor and coordination. During these aquatic performances, males often lift themselves partially out of the water while spreading their wings and tail to display their full array of colors and patterns, creating moments of spectacular beauty that reflect perfectly in the still water beneath them. Females observe these displays while swimming nearby, evaluating potential mates based on the brightness and completeness of their plumage, the quality of their performances, and their ability to maintain their elaborate feathers in perfect condition throughout the demanding breeding season. The mandarin duck's ornate courtship represents one of nature's most successful combinations of visual artistry and behavioral performance, demonstrating how evolutionary pressures can create creatures of almost unbelievable beauty. Across woodlands and forests around the world, cuckoo birds engage in one of the most sophisticated deception strategies in the avian world, using elaborate mimicry and timing precision to trick other bird species into raising their offspring while avoiding the enormous energy costs of building nests and caring for their own young. Female cuckoos spend considerable time observing potential host species, learning their behavioral patterns, nest-building schedules, and egg-laying timing to identify the perfect moments for implementing their reproductive strategy. The deception begins when a female cuckoo locates an active nest belonging to a smaller songbird species and waits for the brief window when the host parents are away foraging, giving her just minutes to execute her carefully planned substitution. Moving with remarkable speed and precision, the female cuckoo removes one of the host's eggs and replaces it with her own, which has evolved to closely mimic the size, color, and pattern of the host species' eggs to avoid detection by the returning parents. Different cuckoo populations have evolved to specialize in parasitizing specific host species, with their eggs becoming so perfectly matched to their chosen victims that even experienced ornithologists can have difficulty distinguishing between host and parasite eggs in the same nest. The cuckoo chick that hatches from this substituted egg faces the challenge of convincing its foster parents to feed and care for it despite being a completely different species, often much larger than the host's own offspring. Young cuckoos have evolved remarkable behavioral adaptations that help them succeed in this deception, including exaggerated begging calls that stimulate parental feeding responses and rapid growth rates that allow them to quickly outcompete any remaining host chicks for food and attention. Some cuckoo species take this deception even further, with chicks that push host eggs or nestlings out of the nest entirely, ensuring that all parental care is directed toward the imposter offspring rather than being shared with the host's legitimate young. In gardens and natural habitats across Australia, male red-backed spiders engage in what may be the ultimate act of reproductive sacrifice, deliberately positioning themselves to be eaten by their mates after copulation in a behavior that ensures their genetic success while guaranteeing their own death. These small but remarkable arachnids have evolved a mating strategy where the male's death actually increases his reproductive success, making him one of the few animals in the world that has evolved to actively facilitate his own consumption by his mate. The courtship process begins when the tiny male, roughly 1/100th the size of his potential mate, approaches the much larger female's web and begins producing specific vibration patterns that signal his species' identity and reproductive intentions rather than triggering her predatory response. Once the female accepts his advances and mating begins, the male performs an extraordinary acrobatic maneuver, executing a complete somersault that positions his abdomen directly in front of the female's fangs while he continues the copulation process. This deliberate positioning serves multiple purposes. It allows the male to continue transferring sperm while simultaneously offering himself as a nutritious meal that will provide the female with essential proteins and nutrients needed for egg production. The female's consumption of her mate serves as a form of paternal investment, with the male's body providing resources that directly contribute to the survival and development of his own offspring, while also keeping the female occupied and less likely to mate with other males who might dilute his genetic contribution. Research has shown that males who successfully complete this ultimate sacrifice father more offspring than those who survive mating, demonstrating that evolution has favored this extreme form of reproductive altruism, where individual survival is traded for genetic success. The male's willingness to become a post-mating meal represents one of nature's most dramatic examples of how reproductive success can sometimes require the ultimate personal sacrifice. In the kelp forests and seagrass beds off the southern coast of Australia, leafy sea dragons engage in one of the most elegant and gentle reproductive rituals in the marine world, where courtship resembles an underwater ballet performed by creatures that seem more like floating works of art than living animals. These extraordinary relatives of seahorses have evolved elaborate leaf-like appendages that make them nearly invisible among the swaying vegetation, creating perfect camouflage that protects them from predators while they perform their delicate mating ceremonies. The courtship process begins when pairs of sea dragons engage in synchronized swimming displays, spiraling around each other in graceful helical patterns that can continue for hours as they assess each other's health and compatibility as breeding partners. During these underwater dances, the dragon's natural movements create gentle currents that cause their leaf-like appendages to flutter and wave in ways that enhance their already remarkable resemblance to floating seaweed, making their courtship displays appear almost magical to human observers. When the pair decides to mate, the female carefully positions herself alongside the male and begins transferring her bright pink or orange eggs directly onto a specialized brood patch on the underside of his tail, where they will attach and remain throughout their development period. The male's tail becomes decorated with these colorful eggs, which look like clusters of tiny jewels adorning his already ornate appearance, creating one of the most beautiful sights in the underwater world. Unlike seahorses, sea dragon eggs are not enclosed in a pouch, but instead remain attached to the male's tail, where they are constantly bathed in fresh seawater while receiving protection from his vigilant care. The male carries these precious eggs for approximately 8 weeks, during which time he must continue feeding and avoiding predators while ensuring that his developing offspring receive optimal conditions for growth. When the tiny sea dragons finally hatch, they are perfect miniature versions of their parents, complete with leaf-like appendages and the ability to camouflage themselves among the kelp forest vegetation, where they will spend their entire lives. In gardens, forests, and woodlands around the world, stick insects engage in what may be the most patient and enduring mating behavior in the insect kingdom, with copulation sessions that can last anywhere from several days to several weeks as pairs remain connected, while going about their daily activities of feeding and moving through their plant habitats. These masters of camouflage, whose bodies perfectly mimic twigs and branches, approach reproduction with the same deliberate patience that characterizes every aspect of their slow-motion lifestyle, where even basic movements are performed with careful precision that maintains their disguise among vegetation. The mating process begins when males use their antennae to detect chemical signals released by receptive females, following pheromone trails through the foliage until they locate potential partners who may be completely motionless and nearly impossible to distinguish from the surrounding plant material. Once a male successfully mounts a female, the pair becomes essentially locked together in a mating embrace that they maintain while continuing their normal daily activities, including feeding on leaves, moving slowly through their territory, and even molting their exoskeletons while remaining connected. This extended copulation serves multiple purposes. It ensures maximum sperm transfer and fertilization success, while also preventing other males from accessing the female during her most fertile period, essentially creating a living chastity belt that guarantees the original male's reproductive success. During their prolonged union, the pair must coordinate their movements carefully, with the female typically taking the lead in locomotion, while the male maintains his grip and adjusts his position to avoid interfering with her feeding and normal behaviors. The female's ability to continue feeding throughout this extended mating period is crucial, as she needs to accumulate the energy and nutrients necessary for producing the large numbers of eggs that will be fertilized by her persistent partner. This marathon mating strategy reflects the stick insect's overall approach to life, where slow, deliberate actions and extraordinary patience often prove more successful than the rushed, high-energy strategies employed by many other insect species. Across the vast savannas and forests of Africa and Asia, female elephants communicate their reproductive readiness through one of the most sophisticated long-distance communication systems in the mammalian world, producing deep infrasonic calls that travel through the ground for distances of up to 6 miles to reach potential mates. These remarkable calls, which are too low in frequency for human ears to detect without special equipment, are produced by females during their brief estrus periods and serve as powerful advertisements that can attract bull elephants from enormous distances across the landscape. The infrasonic communication system works because low-frequency sound waves travel much farther than higher-pitched calls, and they can propagate through solid ground even more effectively than through air, allowing elephants to communicate across distances that would be impossible for most other terrestrial animals. Female elephants in estrus not only produce these long-distance calls, but also engage in distinctive behaviors that signal their reproductive condition to any males in the immediate vicinity, including backing up against males, playful behaviors, and specific postures that indicate their readiness to mate. Bull elephants who receive these infrasonic messages may travel for days to reach the calling female, following the sound signals like an acoustic GPS system that guides them across complex terrain to the source of the reproductive advertisement. When multiple bulls converge on a female in estrus, they engage in dramatic confrontations that involve charging, wrestling with their tusks, and displaying their size and strength through intimidating postures and vocalizations that can be heard for miles. The largest and most dominant bull typically wins the right to mate with the female, but the competition can be so intense that it reshapes the social dynamics of entire elephant populations, as males shift their territories and alliances in response to reproductive opportunities. This sophisticated acoustic mating system allows elephants to maintain genetic diversity across their populations, despite living in a fragmented landscape, where suitable mates may be separated by vast distances and geographical barriers. In the perpetual darkness of the deep ocean where sunlight never penetrates and food is scarce, female anglerfish have evolved one of the most ingenious hunting and mating strategies in the animal kingdom, using bioluminescent lures that serve the dual purpose of attracting both prey and potential mates to their deadly embrace. These bizarre deep-sea predators possess a modified dorsal fin spine that extends from their heads like a fishing rod, complete with a glowing tip called an esca that contains bioluminescent bacteria capable of producing cold light in the absolute darkness of the abyssal depths. The female anglerfish positions herself motionless in the water column, dangling her glowing lure in front of her enormous mouth filled with needle-sharp teeth, creating an irresistible beacon that draws curious prey within striking distance of her lightning-fast feeding response. The bioluminescent lure is not just a simple light, but a sophisticated signaling device that can be controlled by the fish to produce different patterns of flashing, steady glowing, or rhythmic pulsing that may serve as species-specific signals to help potential mates identify her in the vast darkness. Male anglerfish, which are often hundreds of times smaller than females, must locate these luminous signals in an ocean environment where encountering another member of their species might be a once-in-a-lifetime event that determines their entire reproductive success. The male's ability to find a female is complicated by the fact that her lure is designed primarily for hunting rather than mate attraction, meaning that he must approach cautiously to avoid becoming her next meal, while somehow communicating his identity as a potential mate rather than prey. Some deep-sea anglerfish species have evolved elaborate variations on this bioluminescent theme, with different patterns of lights, multiple lures, or specialized signaling, behaviors that help distinguish between feeding and reproductive contexts, in an environment where visual communication is entirely dependent on biological light production. The success of this luminous strategy has allowed anglerfish to thrive in one of Earth's most challenging environments, where their living lights serve as beacons of life in the endless darkness of the deep sea. Beneath our feet in the dark underground world of soil and roots, moles engage in courtship behaviors that are perfectly adapted to their subterranean lifestyle, using elaborate tunnel networks, scent marking, and tactile communication to find and court mates in an environment where sight is useless and sound is muffled. These remarkable fossorial mammals spend virtually their entire lives underground, creating extensive tunnel systems that can span several acres and represent some of the most sophisticated underground architecture in the animal kingdom. During breeding season, male moles expand their tunnel networks significantly, digging new passages that connect with the territories of neighboring females while creating specialized courtship chambers where mating can occur safely away from the dangers of surface predators. The courtship process relies heavily on chemical communication, with moles depositing scent marks throughout their tunnels that provide information about their species, sex, reproductive condition, and individual identity to any other moles who might encounter these underground highways. Male moles follow scent trails left by females, navigating through complex three-dimensional tunnel networks that require sophisticated spatial memory and navigation skills to traverse successfully without becoming lost in the underground maze. When a male finally encounters a female in her tunnel system, the courtship must proceed entirely through touch and chemical signals, as these nearly blind mammals have evolved to communicate and assess potential mates through physical contact and pheromone detection, rather than visual displays. The mating chamber itself is often a specially excavated space that provides enough room for the brief courtship ritual and copulation, after which the male typically retreats to his own territory, while the female prepares a nesting chamber where she will raise her young. This underground reproductive system demonstrates how animals can develop sophisticated social behaviors, even in environments that seem to preclude traditional forms of courtship display and mate selection, proving that love can flourish even in the darkest and most isolated corners of the natural world. High in the canopy of Central and South American rainforests, toucans engage in one of the most charming and playful courtship rituals in the bird world, where pairs toss colorful fruits back and forth in elaborate feeding games that combine nourishment with romance in delightful displays of aerial coordination. These magnificent birds, with their enormous colorful bills that can measure up to 8 inches in length, begin their courtship by selecting the ripest and most appealing fruits from the forest canopy, choosing items that are not only nutritious, but also brightly colored and easy to handle with their oversized beaks. The male initiates the courtship feeding ritual by carefully plucking a perfect fruit and approaching his chosen female with the offering held delicately at the tip of his massive bill, presenting the gift with gentle head movements and soft vocalizations that express his romantic intentions. If the female accepts his advance, she receives the fruit by gently taking it from his bill, but instead of immediately eating it, she often tosses it back to him in a gesture that transforms feeding into play and demonstrates her willingness to engage in the courtship process. This fruit-tossing game can continue for extended periods, with the pair passing the same piece of fruit back and forth dozens of times while perched on branches, or even while hopping closer together along the same limb, creating an intimate ritual that strengthens their pair bond. The seemingly cumbersome bills that make toucans so distinctive actually prove to be perfectly adapted for these courtship games, providing precise control and gentle handling that allows the birds to toss fruits with remarkable accuracy while avoiding any accidental injuries to their partners. As the courtship progresses, the fruit tossing becomes more elaborate and playful, with pairs sometimes juggling multiple fruits simultaneously or engaging in rapid-fire exchanges that test their coordination and timing while building the trust and familiarity necessary for successful pair bonding. This delightful combination of practical feeding and romantic play demonstrates how evolution can create courtship behaviors that serve multiple purposes simultaneously, ensuring that pair formation includes both nutritional support and the development of cooperative skills that will be essential for raising young together. Across the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, salmon embark on one of the most remarkable and precisely navigated journeys in the animal kingdom, traveling thousands of miles through open ocean to return to the exact streams and rivers where they were born years earlier to complete their own reproductive cycles. These incredible fish begin their adult lives in freshwater streams, but migrate to the ocean as juveniles, where they spend several years growing and maturing while traveling across enormous distances and navigating complex ocean currents that carry them far from their natal waters. When the time comes for reproduction, salmon undergo dramatic physiological and behavioral changes that prepare them for their epic homeward journey, developing enhanced navigation abilities and the stamina needed for swimming upstream against powerful currents for hundreds or even thousands of miles. The navigation system that guides salmon home is one of the most sophisticated biological GPS systems known to science, involving magnetic field detection, celestial navigation, and ultimately the recognition of specific chemical signatures that identify their birth streams among thousands of similar waterways. As salmon approach the coastlines near their home rivers, they begin detecting the unique chemical fingerprints of their natal waters, a combination of dissolved minerals, organic compounds, and biological signatures that they memorized as juveniles and can recognize even after years in the ocean. The final phase of their journey requires swimming upstream against rushing water, leaping over waterfalls, and navigating around obstacles like dams and fallen trees, while their bodies undergo further dramatic changes including the development of hooked jaws, humped backs, and brilliant breeding colors. Male salmon compete fiercely for access to prime spawning sites and receptive females, engaging in battles that involve ramming, biting, and displaying their impressive breeding modifications, while females excavate nests called redds in the gravel stream bottom where they will deposit their eggs. After successfully spawning, most Pacific salmon species die within days or weeks, their bodies providing nutrients to the forest ecosystem and their offspring, completing a life cycle that represents one of nature's most extraordinary examples of reproductive migration and sacrifice. In the quiet waters of northern forests and wetlands, beaver pairs demonstrate that successful relationships are built on teamwork and shared goals, working together to create some of the most impressive engineering projects in the animal kingdom, while establishing the foundations for lifelong partnerships and family success. These remarkable rodents form monogamous pair bonds that can last for many years, with partners cooperating in every aspect of their complex lifestyle, from dam construction and lodge building to territory defense and kit rearing, that requires coordinated effort and mutual trust. The courtship process begins when young beavers leave their family groups to establish new territories, using scent marking and vocalizations to advertise their availability, while searching for compatible partners who share their vision of creating the perfect aquatic habitat. Once a pair forms, they begin the enormous task of site selection and habitat modification, choosing locations where they can build dams that will create the deep water pools necessary for their survival and reproduction, while providing protection from predators and harsh weather conditions. The dam building process requires incredible coordination between partners, with both beavers contributing to the design, material gathering, and construction work that can take months to complete and may require moving hundreds of logs, rocks, and mud to create structures that can span hundreds of feet across rivers and streams. Working primarily at night, the pair uses their powerful teeth to fell trees that can weigh several tons, then coordinates the transport and placement of these massive logs into precisely engineered structures that demonstrate sophisticated understanding of water flow, structural engineering, and environmental management. The lodge construction that follows dam completion is equally impressive, with the pair excavating underwater entrances and creating multi-chambered living spaces that provide dry sleeping areas, food storage facilities, and nursery chambers where they will raise their kits in comfort and safety. This engineering partnership extends beyond construction to include ongoing maintenance and improvement of their structures, with both partners working together to repair storm damage, reinforce weak points, and expand their facilities as their family grows and their needs change over time. In the ancient forests of southeastern Australia, male lyrebirds create what may be the most complex and varied acoustic performances in the bird world, incorporating hundreds of different sounds from their environment into elaborate courtship songs that can last for hours and include everything from other bird calls to mechanical noises and even human-made sounds. These remarkable songbirds possess vocal abilities that rival the most sophisticated human musicians, with syrinx muscles that allow them to produce two completely different sounds simultaneously, while maintaining perfect pitch and rhythm throughout their extended performances. The male lyrebird's courtship repertoire begins with the songs of other bird species that share his forest habitat, but his imitations are so perfect that even experienced ornithologists can be fooled into thinking they're hearing the actual species being mimicked rather than a lyrebird performance. As the performance continues, the male incorporates an increasingly diverse array of sounds that might include the calls of distant bird species he encountered during his travels, the sounds of forest animals like koalas and possums, and even environmental noises like rushing water, wind through leaves, and falling branches that add atmospheric elements to his acoustic composition. Modern lyrebirds have expanded their repertoires to include human-made sounds that they encounter in their increasingly urbanized habitats, with some individuals incorporating car alarms, camera shutters, chainsaws, and mobile phone ringtones into their courtship songs with the same precision and artistry they apply to natural sounds. The visual component of the lyrebird's performance is equally impressive, with males spreading their elaborate tail feathers into a shimmering canopy that frames their dancing, while they move through complex choreographed routines that complement their acoustic displays. Female lyrebirds evaluate these performances carefully, apparently assessing both the complexity and accuracy of the male's mimicry, as well as his stamina and coordination in maintaining such demanding displays for extended periods. The most successful males are those who can demonstrate the greatest vocal versatility and physical endurance, suggesting that these elaborate performances serve as honest indicators of cognitive ability, health, and genetic quality that help females choose the best possible mates for their offspring. In the dense rainforests of Central and South America, male poison dart frogs demonstrate extraordinary paternal dedication by serving as living taxis for their developing tadpoles, carrying them on their backs through the forest canopy to find the perfect aquatic nurseries where each youngster can complete its metamorphosis in safety. These tiny but brilliantly colored amphibians begin their reproductive journey with elaborate courtship rituals, where males establish territories and call persistently to attract females, often engaging in complex wrestling matches with rival males to secure the best breeding sites. After successful mating, the female deposits her eggs in carefully chosen locations, such as large leaves or shallow depressions. But her parental duties end there, as the male takes over all responsibility for ensuring the survival of their offspring. When the tadpoles hatch after about 2 weeks, the devoted father allows them to wriggle onto his back where they attach themselves using specialized adhesive discs, creating a living backpack of developing amphibians that he will carry for days or weeks as he searches for suitable rearing sites. The male's task is complicated by the fact that poison dart frog tadpoles are often cannibalistic and must be placed in separate pools to prevent them from eating each other, requiring him to locate multiple isolated water sources such as tree holes, bromeliad plants, or small pools formed in fallen logs. Each tadpole placement requires careful evaluation of water quality, predator presence, and food availability, with the male often testing multiple sites before finding conditions that meet his exacting standards for his offspring's survival. During this taxi service, the male must continue feeding himself while carrying his precious cargo, navigating through dense vegetation and avoiding predators that would threaten both him and his vulnerable tadpoles. Some species take paternal care even further, with males making regular return visits to check on their developing tadpoles, and even feeding them unfertilized eggs to supplement their diet and ensure optimal growth rates in their isolated nursery pools. Among the swaying seagrass beds and coral reefs of tropical and temperate waters, seahorses engage in one of nature's most remarkable role reversals, where males rather than females carry and give birth to their offspring. The courtship process begins with an elegant underwater dance, where pairs of seahorses intertwine their tails and swim together in synchronized spirals, often changing colors in harmony as they bond. During this intimate ritual, which can last for hours or even days, the male's brood pouch begins to swell and develop a rich blood supply in preparation for pregnancy. When the female is ready to transfer her eggs, she inserts her ovipositor into the male's pouch opening, depositing anywhere from 50 to hundreds of tiny eggs directly into his specialized incubation chamber. The male immediately fertilizes the eggs with his sperm, and his pouch seals shut to begin the pregnancy period. Over the next 2 to 4 weeks, depending on the species, the male's body undergoes remarkable changes similar to mammalian pregnancy. His pouch expands dramatically, and he develops a complex placental-like system that provides oxygen and nutrients to the developing embryos while removing waste products. The pregnant male can often be seen gently swaying with the current, occasionally rubbing his swollen pouch against coral or rocks in what appears to be discomfort. When the babies are ready to be born, the male goes into labor, experiencing powerful contractions that can last for hours as he pumps his body to expel the fully formed miniature seahorses into the water, where they immediately begin independent life as tiny replicas of their parents. In the shallow coastal waters and seagrass beds, where delicate pipefish glide through underwater meadows like living ribbons, these close relatives of seahorses have evolved a complete reversal of traditional gender roles that challenges our assumptions about male and female behavior in the animal kingdom. Unlike most species where males compete for females, female pipefish engage in aggressive competition with each other, while males become selective and choosy about which partners they accept for mating. This role reversal occurs because male pipefish, like their seahorse cousins, are the ones who become pregnant and carry developing offspring, making them a limited resource that females must compete to access. Female pipefish develop bright breeding colors and elaborate ornamentation during mating season, displaying vibrant stripes, spots, and fin extensions that they use to court increasingly selective males who evaluate potential partners based on their size, coloration, and apparent health status. The courtship process involves females approaching males and performing elaborate displays that include color changes, undulating swimming patterns, and aggressive posturing toward rival females who might be competing for the same male's attention. Males, meanwhile, assess these competing females carefully, often rejecting multiple suitors before selecting a partner whose size and condition suggest she can provide large, high-quality eggs that will produce healthy offspring. Once a male accepts a female, she transfers her eggs to his specialized brood pouch, where they will be fertilized and developed for several weeks, while he provides all parental care including oxygen, nutrients, and protection from predators. This unusual arrangement